This is the HaltingWinter Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Winterhalter. Today, the final part of a three-part series talking about the game of life. How do we play the game of life? How do we maximize this life that we have, this fleeting life? We're all going to die, so we might as well die having played the game well. And again, this comes from, I've been chewing recently just on my life and I've been listening to Alex Hormozi's his podcast called The Game of Business, and it just made me think, like, why do we just play the game in business? Why don't we play the whole life as a game? Why don't we strategize to win? And I think part of the problem, and the reason why I say the game, is I think we have been educated and influenced to play a game that many of us are not interested in playing, right? There are different people. We live in a different time too. And we go back to the first podcast when I kind of break this down a little bit. Like in 2023, there are just so many opportunities. Specifically, if you live in America, you live in Europe, Western Europe, you play a radically different game than the people far before us in history, even around us on this world. You have luxuries, you have choices, you have opportunities that make you have the ability to play a variety of different games. And what do I mean by games? I mean, what do you want your life to look like? Like, we used to just have to get up and work to eat and to survive. I talked about this in the first podcast. Version 1 of human existence was just survive. Everyone just survived. We just survived. Version 2 was, okay, we've kind of found out how to live with predatory species, how to evade them. So now we can actually grow a little bit. We can actually do some agriculture. We can actually maybe not just live in caves on the run. We can actually thrive a little bit. But we're thriving in a very version 2 thriving. It looks like thriving compared to running for your life all day. Because you actually get to stay in a place and grow some crops and whatever that looks like. And you have version 3, version 4, version 5, whatever these versions are, and you could create all the versions you want looking at human history. The key is in 2023, man, this version is so far beyond all the other versions. And that's where the versions kind of step up, right? They have these steps to them, and some are bigger steps than others. Whatever version we're at now is so far above the others, we look backwards and just go okay, whatever. And that life, even 100 years ago, if anyone from 2023 was dropped into even 1923, but think about 1823, you're just dead. You're dead because you have to go poop in a hole in the ground outside in the middle of winter. You just died. You were like, it's not worth it. I can't handle it. It's just crazy how much has changed in so little time. And that's why I say this podcast is important, because even 50 years ago, the game has changed. The Leave It to Beaver life is not the life most people aspire to today. I don't even know if that life is even a reality. Because of so many variables that we don't have time to even go into. So the key is you need to figure out what game you want to play, because guess what? You have choices. You don't have to play the go to college, go into a specific career field, play the game. There's so many options, and they're all good options. Harvard is not the best option anymore for a variety of reasons. And so figure out what game you want to play, and don't listen. Again, listen, because we all want to learn. We all want to be open-minded, but don't feel forced to play somebody else's game because that's their dream, or that's their desire, or that's their worldview. So last time we looked at the very first episode is really talking about this, the game of life, getting kind of a mindset of, whoa, that's right. Have I thought about life this way? Last podcast, we talked about the first step of now playing the game. That's what we have to assess. We have to assess our life and figure out, what do we love about it? What do we not like about it? What are we frustrated by about it? If we could wave a magic wand and change it, what would we change and why? That's really the big question, is why would you change it? Are you changing it because you feel forced to? Are you changing because you think that's what's expected of you? Are you changing because that's what you actually want? Like when you assess the data of what you like and what you don't like, what you want to spend your time doing, what you don't want to spend your time doing, what does that look like? What does that life look like? And again, we don't live just in an isolated self-life where you just get to do what you want. We have relationships, especially once you have children. Like there are other variables that change life, that make life have realities that, you might not like. But that doesn't mean that your life has to just be a drudgery. Like you still have power to shape it. And you need to be able to have conversations and communicate well to be able to shape it so that you don't live a depressed life. I just think a lot of people are depressed because they're playing someone else's game and they won't communicate. Like you need to communicate effectively to the people around you so that we can all help each other play the game that we want to play. So we assess our life. Now, steps 2 and 3 are we strategize in light of that assessment and then we act. What we don't do is assess and then act. You want to know why? If you skip the strategy session, this is what happens. What happens is you look and you go, you know what? I've been working so hard and I'm assessing life. And one of my assessments is I want to take a big vacation. That's what I really want to do. I looked in 6 months and I said, here's what I'm frustrated with now. Here's what I really want. And in 6 months, I want to take that big European vacation. And that's what you do. You just go right from assessment to action. I'm saving up for it. I'm doing it. Boom. You do it. You go on that trip. And then guess what? You come back and you go, okay, had that trip. That was awesome. Now what are we doing? Oh, you know what? Now, I look back on my assessment. And you know what? My assessment was also, I want to stop renting. I want to buy a house. And I'm going to buy a house. And then you look at your bank account and go, I just dropped the down payment on my house on that trip to Europe. Like, what did I do? Well, you went from assessment to action. You didn't strategize. You didn't make a priority because there's going to be a lot of things that maybe now you want to do that maybe you want to prioritize. But guess what? You can't prioritize everything as a one. You've got to prioritize in light of reality. You've got to prioritize in light of a host of things. And so that's what you do in the strategy section. In the strategy section, you start to look at the assessment puzzle because that's what it is. Every part of your assessment is a puzzle piece. You've got some self things, some relationship pieces, some work pieces, some lifestyle pieces, and now you've got to put those things together in light of the puzzle, right? You create some Venn diagram thing. You know what a Venn diagram is? So you have overlapping circles, and whatever's in the overlap, that's the thing. So if you have work and you have life, and what's the things that overlap that you really like about both? Same thing here. Like when I think about myself and in my relationships, what do you have overlap? What do you and your spouse enjoy together? How can you, or what do you not enjoy, but you can encourage each other in? What's something like what in your life has overlap, or what has impact in, let's say, for instance, like that. I want to go on this big trip. I want to do this big trip. Okay, great. But you also want to buy a house. You want to buy a house that has this and this and this in it, which your house currently doesn't have, and that's frustrating. And so you want to buy a house, and if you got that new house, not only would that house provide personal relaxation and joy and fun, it would also make your work life better. It would make this and this better. And all of a sudden, that becomes a higher priority because it impacts more areas of your life than just the vacation to Europe. Or maybe you go, you know what? We'd like a new house, but we don't like a new house because we just don't like that neighbor. And so if we could get rid of that, we love our house. Actually, we just don't like that neighbor. But, a trip we want to do this trip because we're going to bring our friends and we're going to, out of those friendships, we want something to really make our friendships deeper. And you go, that trip would actually have more significance. We can put up with the neighbor. You know what? We actually heard the neighbor's going to be moving in the next year, 2 years. And so, like, again, there are truths, there are facts, there are realities that come in that shape the things that we discovered in the assessment that may shape and shift the priorities or because you can't do everything at once. And so you got to figure out the plan so that then you can act accordingly. Assessment, then strategize to figure out how then do you start playing the game that you want to play. Here's, I think, the thing that a lot of people they'll assess and go, oh, wow, that was really powerful. I see what I want life. Like they'll paint the picture of what they want life to be, and then they just think that they can snap their fingers and they're frustrated that they didn't bring it into existence in 6 months. What's the title of this podcast? The podcast is The Game. You're painting a picture and then playing a game to bring that into reality. Well, it's called the game of life. Guess what? This is where at the end of the day, you might not ever experience any of the end goals that you set out. Now, I think you probably will. You'll probably experience some of them in maybe not in their complete fullness, because who even knows what that looks like? There's so many variables and things change even in that. But here's the thing, it's the game of life. It's not the game of the next year or the game of the next 5 years. It's the game of life. And the game of life changes. It has all kinds of variables. It has the realities of we change. We develop, our tastes change, things change, people change, all kinds of things that allow the game to evolve, allow the game to adapt, allow the game to be upgraded. And so I want to encourage you, don't think that when you do the assessment, it's not just about bringing that into completion as soon as possible. No, it's about playing the game. It's about taking the journey to get there. You know, you've heard that quote. What is it? The life is lived in the journey, not in the destination. Again, it's about the journey. Live life so that you can enjoy getting to where you want to go. So we need to assess and then strategize so that we see the steps, we see the path, we see the way of the journey, we see kind of what elements are going to take us to the life that we want to be living. And then you act. Out of the assessment, you strategize your priorities, you strategize realities. What's your financial situation? What is your physical situation? What is your all kinds of situations? What's your geographical situation? What is the timeline? You know, we want to have 3 kids. Well, okay, that's going to take a minimum of this many years because it takes 9 months to have a kid. You know, like there are some timeline things that make the impact reality. And so, you know, same thing with a job. Like, okay, well, I want this. Okay, well, have you given enough time to make that happen? Don't be flippant about it. Don't be foolish about it. Actually think what is a realistic time with me pushing myself, with me being driven, with me being focused, not worshiping it, but taking steps to bring it into reality. What does that look like? So we assess, we strategize, we create the plan of action out of our priorities, out of realities, and out of a realistic timeline. And now we act. The easiest way to do this is start reverse engineering things, to get ahead of yourself so that you can work backwards and start stepping it out so that then you can actually take real steps to bring it into fruition, right? If I want a new house with a home office because I want to work from home, that's going to be my new job. Well, guess what? I need to do some work. I need to find a list of the home prices and the locations I want to look at. I need to see what's for sale. I need to see possible job options in that location. And there are all kinds of things, right? There's real work to be done. So don't be afraid of the real work. Start to do it. Start to take the clear steps. Create weekly, monthly goals for yourself to hit. I want to do these tasks to be able to get to where we're going to go. And again, the bigger the goal, the more daunting it can feel until you start to break it down. So break it down. Everything is just, things are very measurable. The problem is, I don't want to save money for 3 years to buy a house. Well, then I guess you're going to stay where you are forever because you're not going to win the lottery. So make a plan and start taking action. You know, fast time goes. I mean, that's what I probably out of my mouth, I probably say the most often, like, man, just this year flew by so fast. Years fly by fast. You can save up. You can start doing the work now. Start doing the work. And then take ground. Every day you want to take some ground. Now, here's a truth when we play the game. Some days you take a step forward. Some days you take 2 steps forward. Some days you take steps backward. But guess what? It's still momentum. It's still movement. And I would rather you be moving, even if it's backwards, because sometimes, right, if you've ever watched tug of war, sometimes you let the opponent win a little bit. You let them take some steps to give them some momentum so that you can take a little rest and then you can drive and you can start going. Like, backwards is not always bad. Actually, what I think is the worst is not moving at all, because that's apathy. That's stale. That's rust, decay. I would rather be moving. And I've taken some seasons where it feels like, where I think you will feel like this feels backwards. It feels like I'm burning money, I'm burning time, I'm burning, like, why? Man, it just feels like I'm going backwards. But then when all of a sudden the momentum shifts, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, it felt like I was moving backwards, but it wasn't. I was moving forward, but I was in the thick of it. I was in the mud. But I wasn't stuck. I was taking steps. I was moving. Even if it felt like it wasn't going anywhere, it was. It was doing the work. So do the work. So I want to encourage you again. How do you play the game? You assess. You figure out what game you've been playing. You figure out the rules that you don't like. You figure out the elements of the game that you don't like. You figure out the elements of the game that you do like. Because we don't want to be just living out of what we don't like. We want to be living out of the life that we actually want to experience. So what does that look like in every facet? From your personal to your relationships, to your professional life, your vocation, to your lifestyle. What do you want your life to look like? And then play the game. Don't get so emotionally attached to worth and identity and value. Don't get so attached to what you think people are judging you, what they're assuming of you. Who cares? Because we're all going to die. And at the end of the day, you're going to be forgotten. So why are you living for people? Why are you living for their approval? It isn't. I'm not saying to flip and you do you and you just worship yourself. I don't think that's healthy at all. But I'm speaking from a place where I've done that. I've lived out of expectations, and they weren't even people's expectations. I put expectations on others and then put them on myself. Be careful of that. Be careful. And so play the game that you want to play. But to play it, you got to figure it out. You got to figure out the board. What's the board? What's the actual game board look like? What do the pieces look like? What are the rules? What are the boundaries? What's the objective? How many times do we go around the board? What does winning look like? Like, you got to figure out the game. And then you have to assess, figure out what game you're playing, what game you want to play. You got to strategize. If I play this game, how do I win? And then, what does winning look like? What will it take to win? It'll take turns. It takes actually playing the game. You don't just think about the game. I don't just pull up Monopoly and go, I set it up, I won. Now I got to play the game. And then, how do you act? How do you actually live out your strategy so that you win day by day? There it is, the game of life. I hope that encourages you. I hope it makes you think. Because here's why I did this. At the end of the day, I want you to live an intentional, purposeful life. I want to live an intentional, purposeful life. And to do that means I have to be cognizant of the game that I'm playing. I have to be cognizant about how emotionally invested I get in all the areas of my life where I need to be a little bit less so that I can actually play the game, so that I can actually get the results that I want, so I can stop getting so caught up in especially negative feelings. Oh, my relationships are bad because of X. No, your relationships are bad because you won't take action. Your job is not what it could be because you won't take action, because you've attributed too much failure to your worth instead of failure to learning lessons so that you can move forward. Okay? I hope that gives you something to chew on. If I can help in this is what I do. I am a business coach. I'm a life coach. I'm a coach that coaches your person and your profession, because I want business owners, business leaders, and high capacity people to live lives of purpose and intention. And why do I typically work with leaders and high achievers? It's because you have the most influence on others, and I want to influence the world for good. Business owners and leaders have influence over their employees. They have influence over their customers. And so I find that when I work with people like that, I'm making the world a better place, because better business owners lead better businesses. Better business leaders lead better businesses. High achieving people have greater influence over people, and they can influence them in positive ways. instead of negative ways. And so that's what I'm giving my life to. And if you could be helped and served by my participation in your life, whatever that looks like, I would love to see how I can help. So go to HaltingWinter.com, HaltingWinter.com. You can schedule a free call. Just let's have some time to chat and figure out what a relationship might look like and what I might do to be able to come alongside and help you live the game of life that would bring you the most joy and satisfaction and purpose and intention. Until next time, Seth Winterhalter, the Halting Winter Podcast. We'll see you.